Welcome to today's webinar, The Organizational Role of the Supervisor. This is one in a long-running series of free webinars offered by Procept, a new one roughly every 2 weeks throughout the year that are just one way that Procept gives back to the community. Procept has been delivering management training and consulting for many years around the world, with business operations starting back in 1965 in California. Since that time, the Procept group of companies has trained over 1 million people from over 17,000 organizations. Today's webinar is going to look at the role of the supervisor, how we usually see the role today and how we should be seeing it. We're going to talk about how supervisors differ from managers, how the two should be working together. The information we'll be presenting is based upon academic research and best practices. You may find that what we suggest differs from how things are being done today in your organization. Please consider this an opportunity to improve your own professional practice to become better at your job, whether you're a supervisor, a manager, or you just do aspire to become one someday. And remember, we can all be change agents within our organizations, either advocating for grand changes to processes or structures, or by role modeling better practices and behaviors through our own professional actions. I encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar. However, I will be leaving time for answering questions at the end, so type them into the chat window or the questions window as they occur to you so you don't forget them, and I'll address them at the end of the presentation. I also want you to know that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be posted later to Procept's YouTube channel. The recording only captures the slides and my voice. Anything in the chat window or your webcam images will not be recorded, so don't be afraid to share. Okay, so let's begin. I'm Kevin Aguanno. First off, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Over my long career, I've worked in hierarchical organizations as a frontline employee, a supervisor, a frontline manager, a middle manager, and in executive positions, including as president of both for-profit and nonprofit organizations. I've worked in all sizes of businesses, from independent businesses and lean agile startups and right through to 15 years at IBM as an executive project manager and principal consultant. In my time, I've worked with thousands of people from all types of organizations in numerous organizational positions, and I think I've got a fairly good grasp of organizational management. I have a master's from George Washington University School of Business and Public Management. I'm a certified management consultant. I hold many project management certifications, and I've been awarded as a fellow of 2 management associations in Canada and the UK. I've offered over 30 books and DVDs on management topics. I've published numerous articles around the world, and I teach management at several universities. Please take advantage of this opportunity to ask lots of questions and maximize the value you get out of this presentation. You can reach out to me through LinkedIn or via my email at aguanno@procept.com. That's my last name, Aguanno @procept.com, PROCEPT.com. Now, let's get into our topic today. I'm going to start with a discussion on organizational structures. Specifically, I'm going to look at the organizational hierarchy. Then we're going to look at 3 different roles in the organization: mission workers, supervisors, and managers. We'll examine the role of each and specifically how they interact with supervisors as part of our topic today on the role played by supervisors in the running of an organization. Executives have a love-hate relationship with the organizational hierarchy. When business is good, the hierarchical structure is the only way to go. And when business is not so good, the hierarchy is the first and most immediate target for change. It is certainly easier to blame the hierarchy and to try to fix an org chart than it is to seek out and correct the real causes of the hard times. Jack Gordon, in a 1994 article in Training magazine, said, quote, "If all is not well in your traditionally structured hierarchical organization, the reason is that there are inherent irreparable flaws in hierarchical systems that have rendered them obsolete here in the information age." He continues, "Hierarchies are dinosaurs, lumbering, unable to adapt to the pace of change, paralyzed by complexity, and doomed to die." Well, Gordon's comments represent the typical confusion that exists about the differences between a hierarchy and a bureaucracy. People commonly use the two terms synonymously. However, understanding the differences between the two is the first step in recognizing the true value of the hierarchy as the basic fundamental structure of an organization. Organizational hierarchy specifically defines accountability and the separation of unique skills and knowledge. Bureaucracy, on the other hand, contains too many layers of management, each engrossed in red tape and paperwork, and none with any uniquely defined accountabilities. Ultimately, no matter the structure, there is an overall boss. What happens below the overall boss determines the structure of the organization and affects its reporting structures, power structures, and even its culture. So let's now take a look at the organizational hierarchy. In the current business environment, statements in support of hierarchies are looked upon as being old-fashioned, dictatorial, or even passé. I want to be clear that when I refer to a hierarchy, I'm making a distinction. I'm not necessarily focusing on a power hierarchy, but rather the hierarchy of knowledge. While preserving the integrity of the organizational structure, the hierarchy of knowledge also emphasizes the need for each level of the hierarchy to possess specific knowledge and skills that are unique to that level. It helps assure the integrity of the organizational structure and prevents the hierarchy from becoming a lumbering bureaucracy. Above all, properly structured hierarchies work because the logical tiering of knowledge. Any organization, because it's foremost an occupational association, not simply a collection of autonomous individuals, must be staffed by those who perform 4 general functions. There are employees who produce, sell, and deliver the products or services from which revenue is derived and that are required by the organization's charter. There are supervisors who oversee the work by providing the supports and resources necessary to produce the products and services. There are managers who implement the infrastructure, procedures, and policies by which the organization is to function, and there are top managers who provide for the long-term growth and development of the entire organization. Each of these functions requires specialized knowledge that is unique to the function and what must be applied in hierarchical order, either bottom up or top down. This is not to say that there are not commonalities of knowledge that exist at all levels. Certainly, there's a base level of knowledge about the company, its products, structures, policies, and missions that all employees should have. Of course, some employees in any function of the organization may have extensive knowledge about any of the other functions. A sales manager whose primary function is to manage the sales group may have had past experience in customer service, in supervising a sales force, and in direct sales. He or she may have expertise in a number of organizational functions, moving up through the ranks, bringing accumulated knowledge from each level as he or she moves upwards. The key concept to keep in mind is that each functional level requires knowledge that is both unique to that level and independent of all other levels. For example, successful athletic teams exemplify this concept. When everyone is on the field, all players must have some common skills regardless of their position on the team. But they also need skills specific to their playing position. Many organizations promote people from position to position in order for them to develop knowledge and skills from various areas of the business. However, they're often promoted before they have achieved any mastery of these new skills. And this is when we start to see the dysfunction materialize. People promoted as supervisors just because they're really good at their jobs and not because they possess any of the skills or traits unique to supervisors. Supervisors promoted to managers with the thinking that it's just supervising multiple departments but without any knowledge of management skills. Even people being promoted to top executive positions who end up micromanaging because they don't know any better. They entered into management with only the knowledge of their initial job function and never attained the knowledge and skills of top management. Up to now, I've been talking about the structure of the organizations and the roles within the organization. Now let's look at the work being performed by the organization and its divisions. Specifically, let's not start at the top, but rather the bottom, the workers, employees, craftspeople, associates, or members of the cast. These are the people doing the work of the organization, and let's call them mission workers. The term mission worker was first used by Frank Hoffman, co-founder of Practical Management, Inc. Hoffman coined the term sometime in the late 1960s or early 1970s to denote a special group of people in an organization. He did this in his popular seminar, Successful Middle Management. Today, this term and many of the concepts from that seminar have taken on even more significance and have become part of common management wisdom. So, what is a mission worker? Well, basically, the term mission worker refers to the people who actually accomplish the mission of the work unit. Regardless of their background, skills, education level, or pay rate, if they're paid to accomplish the mission of a given unit or department within the organization, then they are mission workers. For example, in an accounting unit where the mission is to produce financial documents, accountants are the mission workers, as are the accounts receivable clerks, the bookkeepers. Regardless of how many degrees they may have or how skilled they may be, right? They are mission workers. Machine operators, nurses, surgeons, customer service reps, salespeople, reservation agents, all of these qualify as mission workers. Salary, education level, and job title have no bearing on this definition. On a surgical team, the primary mission worker is the surgeon. In a research lab, a PhD chemist may be the primary mission worker. Both can hardly be called poorly educated or lowly paid. Brain surgeons to bricklayers, attorneys to electricians, all are mission workers. Mission workers then can exist anywhere within an organization structure, not just at the bottom of the chart. So, what's the significance of the term mission worker? It's simply that these two words define both the structure and the performance of the organization. Mission workers are by far the most significant group of people in the entire organization. They bring the organization the specified skills to produce the products or services that are the lifeblood of the organization. Without mission workers, supervisors, managers, executives, even the CEO, they're superfluous. Since an organization exists solely to produce the mission work, mission workers are the true heroes of any successful entity. There are other critical reasons why organizations must give the mission work level significantly more attention and support than has traditionally been the case. Mission workers use and to a significant extent control the greatest percent of total resources expended by the organization. Raw materials, machine utilization and maintenance, transportation and distribution, utilities, paperwork, and processes, all these and many more are directly expended or impacted by mission workers. How well they handle their enormous responsibility directly affects the overall survival of the organization. How well mission workers perform is a direct reflection on how well management carries out its unique and specific functions. Most workers embody the history, culture, and accumulated knowledge of the organization. They have lived, and often suffered, through all the operational, product, and technological changes the organization has endured. By their performance over time, they have set the standard for productivity, quality, cost, and safety. They have developed and maintained the level of behavior and the unique character and culture of the company. They possess the intricate and detailed knowledge of the products, services, and operational processes and the idiosyncrasies that aren't found in any operating manual or training video. In their heads exists indispensable knowledge that exists nowhere else in the organization. These are the knowledge workers in the new trend towards the learning organization. And mission workers are the face of the organization. In fact, they are the organization in the eyes of customers because their work output is what the customers buy. Customer satisfaction and the reputation of the organization lies in the hands of these workers. Their names or ID numbers are written on the insides of tires or on inspection chits in the pockets of your new blue jeans or in the shift codes printed on the bottom of that can of soup you just bought. They bring the product to market from raw material to finished good, and organizational managers would be well served by remembering this. There are a number of factors challenging the effectiveness of mission workers. The most obvious is downsizing. As people go out the door, they take along their store of accumulated knowledge, skills, and expertise. These are irreplaceable in the short term, and even looking at a long-term view, the losses are much greater than any gains in cost reductions. It's even more disheartening when organizations make no attempt to distinguish between talented resources and the dead wood. Cuts are made across the board, or by division or department, or by offering an early retirement package to only the most senior employees, those with the greatest number of years of experience and expertise. Add to that the threat that if not enough people take the leave package, terminations will be made arbitrarily until the target numbers have been achieved. Replacing qualified experienced workers with lower paid, less experienced workers is another challenge to mission work. The resulting inability to perform at a high level of productivity or quality is evident in the current deterioration of customer satisfaction in quality and service roles. Another significant factor that's become more prominent in recent years is outsourcing jobs to other organizations, some even in other countries. This is another drain on talent. Add in the confounding factors of different cultures between organizations, possibly different policies and processes, and even communications issues when dealing across countries, both language and time zones, and you've got a recipe for increased complexity, costs, and chaos. Automation through better machinery, robotics, and artificial intelligence are creating even more reductions in mission workers. While one could argue that a machine will produce more consistent results than a person, that only holds true for ideal or standard circumstances. As soon as something out of the ordinary arises, the machine will likely fail, while an experienced person would still likely be able to adapt and still produce. Plus, they'd be able to make suggestions for changing processes or equipment configurations to reduce the challenges in the future should the anomaly arise again. Fewer mission workers are being required to complete more mission work in less time. Cost savings are accomplished by organizations hiring fewer replacement workers than those laid off, or more likely, not hiring replacements at all and spreading the mission work across those who remain. Productivity, cost, and other performance requirements are not being changed to reflect the lower capabilities. Time becomes the most critical resource as a reduced workforce of mission workers pushes harder to produce an equal or greater amount of work. The 8-hour day has become a thing of the past. More work, less pay, more stress, less downtime, and never-ending work is a formula for disaster. Leadership has been seriously eroded, particularly at the supervisory level. Younger workers with little or no mission work or leadership experience are being promoted into leadership positions, often because they have a university degree or are considered to be on the fast track. Maybe the confusion over the work division between supervisors and mission workers best explains why there's rarely true management in a hospital or the running of a university. In a hospital, the best surgeon usually becomes the head of surgery, but the surgeon still performs surgery on a regular basis. In effect, the surgeon continues to function as a highly qualified mission worker, not as a true supervisor or manager. At best, the surgeon performs perfunctory administrative duties for the surgical unit. It demands time the head of surgery simply does not have. In a university, most department heads go right on researching and teaching. No matter how hard these organizations try, and they've tried for decades, true managing cannot be performed in these units unless they change their way of doing business. So now let's dig a little deeper into the specific role of the supervisor. So what is a supervisor? Let me know what you think and type your answer in the chat window. If you're watching this recording, I'm sorry you won't be able to do so, but in the attendees in the live session, please go ahead and type your answers in the chat window. What is a supervisor? I'm seeing the boss, the one who provides performance feedback, the one spying on you, the one who gives you your direct orders. Well, let's look at the official answer. Simply put, supervisors are all of the people in the organization who have mission workers reporting directly to them. Regardless of the title, if they fit the definition, and if the people reporting to them fit the definition of mission workers, then they are indeed supervisors. This means that a supervisor could be at any level, from the lowest to the highest in the organization. What makes supervision so important and unique as to warrant a special place on the management team? Well, first, supervisors are the frontline representatives of both management and employees. They play a delicate buffer role. Second, they have significant influence on all the major resources of the organization. Supervisors influence the mission workers and the cost of goods and services that are the lifeline of a company. Third, they are the members of the management team who are closest to the work and subsequently the most knowledgeable about it. Therefore, supervisors should be the primary decision makers in mission work and operational issues. Organizations that devalue or ignore or eliminate this role run the risk of significant long-term problems. To perform supervision effectively requires far more than the basic collection of good human relations skills that now dominate most competency lists for supervisors. It requires far more than Stephen Covey's 7 habits and the coaching and facilitating skills that now seem to dominate the training regimen for supervisors. All these may help the supervisor to be a better person. They are very important after all, but they're not enough to make someone a good supervisor. The primary order of business for all supervisors is to understand their role on the management team and how that role should be played in order to make the maximum contribution to the organization. In order to fulfill their unique position in the organizational hierarchy, supervisors must first master the main and most critical function: to be knowledgeable and concerned with all the methods and techniques by which the mission workers accomplish their mission. Without mastering these most critical elements, the supervisor will resemble a driver who is well versed in traffic laws, but who doesn't know how to drive a car. Such a driver has about as much value as the supervisors who talk a good game about supervision, who know all the latest theories, but who don't understand the work of those whom they are supervising. Mastering the methods and techniques will familiarize the supervisor with 2 critical areas: prevention of mission work errors and improvement of the performance of the mission workers. Without general knowledge of methods and techniques, not necessarily the intricate details, not the nuts and bolts of the mission work, the best a supervisor can do is catch errors after they occur, often when it's too late. Similarly, improvement of mission work performance suffers when the supervisor lacks the mission work knowledge to offer good coaching and training and to achieve superior results. A supervisor must not only be interested in work improvements, but obsesses with continuous improvement in all of the methods and techniques of the mission workers' jobs. A supervisor must have time to search out and learn new approaches to be used in improving the mission workers' tasks. The supervisor should experiment with new methods and should be the one who takes the lead in teaching new methods to his or her group of mission workers. That is the only way that continuous improvement makes sense and is practical. A supervisor must be the critical person involved in seeing that today's job will be even better in quality while taking less time with lower costs. No other position or function in the organization can make these improvements continuously, realistically, practically, and successfully. If an organization doesn't train supervisors in the appropriate skills, and it doesn't allow them to be the pivotal force in all matters related to mission work, then true supervision can't take place. Subsequently, the organization will have to live with chaos and dissatisfaction, arbitration, unmotivated employees, and most importantly, dissatisfied customers. In addition to being knowledgeable about the methods and techniques of the mission work, supervisors need to master 2 additional skill sets, one generic and the other specific to the mission work, depending on the nature of the business. The generic skills can be summed up generally as mastery of adult learning principles and on-the-job training techniques. Supervisors need to be able to train mission workers, help them correct their mistakes, and retrain them when work methods change. This skill requires that supervisors learn how to teach effectively in both one-on-one and small group situations. And mastery of practical coaching techniques. This skill must be clear and basic, avoiding the theoretical and psychological nuances so common in current coaching workshops. Counseling, psychological analysis, and profiling are dangerous in the hands of amateurs. Having skills in work method analysis. Such skills are critical for supervisors because they must analyze work methods, eliminate duplication, and institute the most efficient ways of getting the job done. And finally, they need to be proficient in distributing work. The tasks of the mission workers must be evenly distributed so that the production fluctuations can be accommodated and machine changeovers can be handled efficiently. Cross-training should be a basic part of the supervisor's task. There are also specific supervisory skills that each organization must identify for itself. The general areas of accountability for a supervisor, all of which must be followed by an action plan, are: a supervisor must inform mission workers in each unit of increased or decreased workloads, work schedules, work deadlines, and, when they occur, work emergencies. A supervisor must review all work quality and accuracy continuously with the mission worker. A supervisor makes suitable work assignments, make sure that everyone is trained and capable of doing the assigned jobs. A supervisor handles personnel matters, interviews, hires, and takes disciplinary action as required by the company's human resource policies. A supervisor handles orientation and training, reviews the performance of all mission workers, especially new employees, and takes appropriate actions to correct skill deficiencies. A supervisor is concerned about the cost reduction and productivity improvement. They keep careful track of controllable costs and identify and eliminate duplications. A supervisor is responsible for security. They inform the work group of all security matters and do spot checks for possible infractions of security regulations. A supervisor coordinates with other work units, especially with units that precede and follow the work of a supervisor's unit. A supervisor communicates with outside and inside customers on a daily basis, and outside customers when appropriate. And being aware of the organizational goals and objectives, the supervisor develops a working plan to implement the departmental tasks that will move the company in the direction of its goals and objectives. A supervisor keeps management informed by communicating upward in the organization. And finally, a supervisor initiates budgeting processes and keeps management informed through regular and current updates of departmental needs and conditions. If this list of supervisory duties appears formidable, that's because it is. However, all these duties must be performed, and the best person to assure that everything happens on time, on budget, and as planned is the supervisor, not the manager or staff specialists. Should supervisors abandon or delegate these accountabilities, or if staff functions usurp them, the organization's structure and performance will be weakened. Because of the enormity of the job of supervision, organizations are often tempted to offload some of the supervisory duties to others. Managers will tend to take on part of the job in a well-meaning effort to relieve the pressure on supervisors, or interim positions such as assistant supervisors or assistant managers are created. The problem with these approaches is the potential for dilution of accountability. It's been demonstrated over and over again that improvement must occur at the level that is directly accountable for the results. Shared accountability just doesn't work. When we share accountability, we tend to fail in producing the desired results. The critical issues for managers is to make sure they're not bypassing or undermining supervision. Supervision is so critical to an organization that if it doesn't happen at the right level, it will happen at the management level or even at the top management level. Let me tell you a quick story to help illustrate this concept. So on the golf course, the president of XYZ company says to his good friend, the president of ABC company, "Hey, listen, Pete, one piece of business before we tee off. My people tell me that the last batch of widgets you sent us was defective. The holes were too small and the fluids wouldn't pass through. What happened?" Of course, Pete doesn't know the answer, but he promises to check into it first thing Monday morning. On Monday, Pete, a strong believer in the chain of command, calls in the vice president. He says, "Jerry, we've got a problem with those widgets we sent to XYZ last week. what size hole did you drill in that batch? Now, Jerry's been around the block a few times, and he knows how to answer a question from the president when he doesn't know the answer. And he says, I don't know, but I'll find out. And then immediately sets off to find his manager of manufacturing. Jerry approaches her and says, hey, listen, Glendine, that last batch of widgets we sent to XYZ, what size did we drill? Glendine answers, what darned if I know, but I'll check it out. And Glendine carries the question to the supervisor, who says he'll check with the mission worker who actually handled the order. 3/8, right? 3/8. Why did we choose 3/8? Asks Pete, the president, when he heard back on his size request. The new question passes again back down through the organization's chain of command, back through the supervisor to the frontline worker. And the answer, because the spec book calls for 3/8 for this application, answers the mission worker to the supervisor, who passes it up through management, up through the vice president, and back to Pete. Well, when Pete hears the answer, he says, everyone knows that for years we've built a 10% fudge factor when you use the spec book. I don't want any more widgets going out to XYZ company with less than a half-inch hole. Yes, sir, is the reply. That command now passes down through the organization. What's just happened? Well, without violating the chain of command, the president of ABC just made a supervisory decision, one that affects both the methods and the results of the mission work activity. Now, it's certainly within his jurisdiction to do so, but in the process, he runs the risk of undermining the credibility of his subordinate managers and supervisors, failing to instigate any diagnosis of the widget problem, like, for example, XYZ might be, using the wrong fluids. And Pete has implemented a major change in the mission work that is more than likely incorrect. A supervisory task, when performed by higher management, not only can be the cause of more costly and complicated operations, but it can also weaken the future performance of the supervisor. In this specific example, if the supervisor doesn't feel accountable for the job problem, more than likely he or she will not feel the need to be concerned under similar circumstances in the future. What's happened is the supervisor now feels that whenever something goes wrong, management will fix it. Furthermore, the president of ABC unwittingly made 3 layers of management into little more than messengers. They had no real input. They have no plan on how to stop the same thing from happening in the future. They weren't even sure if the CEO's correction was accurate. They may again discover that some widgets are not exactly right for some other customer, but that customer may not care to act as ABC's quality control function, and that customer may simply take their business elsewhere. So let's talk a little bit more about managers. What are managers? What's the role of a manager? What do you think? Go ahead and type your answer into the chat window. Oh, somebody says, I thought they were the same as supervisor. Now I'm not sure. Okay, fair enough. What is the role of a manager? Somebody said to supervise the supervisors. Well, that would still make them potentially a supervisor. They're supervising people. What else? I guess they might be supervising supervisors. Yeah, what else? Somebody said acquiring resources. Somebody says approvals, budgeting. Okay. Most people typically have a results-oriented description. Something like, the successful manager gets the work out on schedule within costs and quality parameters and meets the requirements of safety, policy, and procedures. There's some legitimacy to this, as a manager who doesn't get the work out within those parameters won't be a manager for very long. But 2 things are striking about that response. First, it describes the work of other people, the mission workers and the supervisors, not the managers. What's the role of a manager? The mission workers are the ones responsible for getting the work out. That response says nothing about what a successful manager does as a manager. The second problem with this definition is that results are always measured either in real time or after the fact. There's no mention of ongoing improvement of these results or for managerial activities that are future directed. A results-focused definition implies that a manager can be successfully devoting all of his or her time to getting today's work out with little regard for tomorrow. Dr. Frank Hoffman says that managers are those people in the organization who have supervisors and or other managers reporting to them. That's certainly true, but it doesn't fully describe the work of a manager. Doctors Jack Asgar and Richard Wagley say that managers run the organization internally on a day-to-day basis. This is better, but it still lacks specifics. Others say that a manager's job is planning, organizing, and controlling. I disagree. Not because a manager doesn't engage in these activities, but rather because these activities are so general that everyone in the organization should be doing them. It makes little sense to define a management position by the functions that everyone carries out to various degrees. In my consulting work, I'm often tasked with resolving conflicts between departments or turning around troubled projects. I often ask the managers involved, whose job is it to settle the dispute or to coordinate the cross-departmental joint efforts? The usual answer is the next level up, kick it upstairs. And this is a common reflex, right? Because managers have been conditioned to view their jobs as staying within their own little pyramid structure. However, if this logic is followed, the disputes may keep getting kicked further and further up to the top levels of the organization for resolution. When I ask the managers then, do you really want the top management micromanaging your department? They universally answer no. So I reword the question, then who should have handled the dispute in the first place? And they're forced to admit that it's the managers of the respective departments who should have worked together to resolve these issues first. Dealing with interdepartmental activities, and let's call this lateral coordination, is a direct responsibility of managers. Escalation or kicking things upstairs should only be done when the respective managers are unable to resolve a dispute or agree on a course of action. Managers are concerned with providing resources so that the work of the organization can be accomplished. Functions performed often include budgeting, which is basically an attempt to predict the needed resources for a designated project or operation and identify how much and in what category these resources will be allotted so that the work units can accomplish their tasks. And planning, which is a rational organizing of events to clarify how the designated budget should be spent and in what sequence. And organizing, which provides for the establishment of logical work units to implement plans made according to the budget allocation. But these three items are only the very basic skills of managing taught to our new managers at the start of their management careers. What else does a good manager need to do? Well, managers need to be able to get their supervisors to properly supervise. It's not an easy process. Even though the statement sounds simple, managers must make sure that they do not usurp the functions belonging to their supervisors. Supervisory tasks by their nature are urgent. This urgency too often causes managers to jump in and take control, which, as I've said previously, causes two problems. It prevents supervisors from doing their jobs, and it steals time from managers from performing their own functions. Managers are responsible for the ongoing training and development of supervisors. More often than not, new supervisors are informed of their promotion on a Friday afternoon and are told a new position begins Monday morning, as if something magical is going to happen over the weekend, transforming them from mission workers to supervisors. They end up learning to supervise through a trial and error or by copying what other supervisors do. Rarely are they told what they are accountable for beyond getting the work out. Managers are responsible for the optimal running of the organization underneath them. Over time, an organization left to itself tends to become more costly to operate and less profitable. Processes become more elaborate and complex. Everyone wants to add enhancements, which tend to increase the costs without an associated increase in profits or effectiveness. For example, look at the uncontrolled use of email, which was supposed to make us more efficient, freeing up time for other work. Instead, many of us now spend a third to half our workdays just wading through an email inbox overloaded with non-critical messages, wasting precious time. Government tends to create lots of inefficiencies. For example, they hire good employees, but then prevent them from performing to the best of their abilities because of bureaucratic processes, inept management, or political considerations. The tendency is for employees to become discouraged and to stop trying to do their best, simply counting the days until they can retire with full pensions. Poor managers will try to find busy work for them to promote them out of their underperforming job. And good managers will look ahead and try to avoid it in the first place. And managers need to focus on increasing effectiveness, doing the right things rather than just doing things right. Doing things more efficiently misses out on the fact that maybe those things may not even be needed in the first place. Every organizational activity is a candidate for further improvement, but first it's got to pass the contribution test to find out if it's even needed at all. So, supervisors get to make sure mission workers are getting the work done properly, while managers provide the environment and the resources for the workers to succeed. Managers focus inwards, looking at their internal organization, and top managers, such as senior executives, should look outwards at competitors, changing customer needs, changing government regulations, and the like, providing vision and strategy for the middle managers to carry out through their mission workers and supervisors. So, in conclusion, supervisors are important members of the management team. Remember that having managers attempting to do the work of their supervisors causes all kinds of problems. Managers should stay within their lanes and allow and enable through support their supervisors to do their own jobs. Supervisors should be experts at the mission work being done by the employees working underneath them. With this expertise, they can provide direction, make better decisions, and help resolve issues, and much more. Supervisors are the ones tasked with making sure the work is being done properly. That is, according to specifications, following safety standards, etc., and also that the work's being done on schedule. As experts in the work being done underneath them, supervisors should be looking for opportunities to improve the efficiency or performance of their mission workers and any equipment or processes that they may be using. And finally, supervisors are directly responsible for making sure that organizational objectives passed down from management get implemented on the front lines at a practical level. Supervisors are a key member of management, and each level in the hierarchy of knowledge requires its own unique sets of skills and experience. This is most important at the supervisory level. The mission work of any organization is so critical and costly that it will be supervised, hopefully by supervisors. However, if the supervisory level is weak or not fully implemented, then managers will be pulled off of their own work to carry out this critical function, creating a void at the management level. This void tends to get filled by creating more layers of management or by forcing top management to take an internal focus rather than an external focus. And then who's going to carry out the top management's external functions? The answer isn't nobody. Your competitors are eagerly waiting for the day when your top management is no longer visible in the marketplace, in your customer boardrooms, or in government. This ends the formal part of my presentation. Now I'm going to open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat window. Just type them into the chat window and I'll read them out and attempt to answer them. Okay, so go ahead, just type your questions into the chat window. Okay, somebody. Okay, Tamir wrote, in my organization, we don't have supervisors. We just have managers who are performing some of the supervisory roles. And there's assistant managers and managers above them. Who's managing and who is the supervisor? Well, we'd have to find out a little bit more detail. If the mission workers are reporting to your frontline managers, then really they're supervisors. Are they dealing with overall changes to corporate strategy? No, probably not. Are they sitting on really important steering committees? Probably not. So then they're really supervisors. Doesn't matter what their title is. Maybe we call them managers, but they're really functioning as supervisors, right? They're inspecting your work, they're approving things, making sure that the work meets quality standards. That's the job of a supervisor. Now, your middle managers, the managers between top management and supervisors, right, those managers, they may be functioning as managers, or they may also have some supervisory function as well, right? So, for example, a senior manager might be the supervisor for all the frontline managers, making sure they're doing their work properly. So they maybe both have a management role and a supervisory role. But as we saw, when you're kind of pulled in two directions, the supervisory stuff tends to take priority because it's urgent, right? It's the running of the business. That's going to capture everybody's attention. And your management functions, like looking at the future and planning for future evolutions and change, that stuff tends to fall by the wayside. And we have many organizations. I can think of many of my consulting clients, for example, that had decent supervision, but had no real management going on. It was just a bunch of supervisors trying to run the ongoing operations. There were people with the management title throughout, but they weren't really doing the managing work. Okay. Harlan says, can a supervisor be a supervisor and a mission worker, for example, a lead worker? Okay, so the job of like a lead worker or a lead hand, or sometimes you get your most senior staff member in a particular role, the most experienced mission worker, and we'll give them a special status, a special title, right? That they're the mission worker and they're also, providing guidance to their peers, training and mentoring their peers. We saw that this is part of the job of a supervisor. So it sounds like what's happening is some of your most senior experienced staff members are given some supervisory duties. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that as in the process of growing somebody into a supervisor, but that makes me wonder, what does the level above them do then? If they're not taking care of that, who is? Is your supervisor delegating some of their responsibility away? That creates a somewhat dangerous situation. Or is this lead role really the supervisor who's also doing mission work, which means they're not having the right time to focus on their supervisory activities? They're getting caught up in the mission work itself, which is always more critical and urgent, right? Excellent. Any more questions? Charla, did I pronounce that correctly? Charla? Yeah, oh, yeah. So Charla asks, is there training for supervisors? Well, there's general training on how to be a good supervisor. In fact, Procept, the company that's presenting this webinar, does have a course for new supervisors, the jobs of the frontline supervisor. We've got a couple supervisory training courses available. But that just gives the generic skills of supervision. The more specific skills might be very dependent on what you're doing. For example, if you're the supervisor, for a phone company over a bunch of engineers and technicians, then the supervisor really needs to understand the technical work that's going on in that area to be able to effectively supervise. And there's actually a funny story about that. One of our large phone companies, few years back, I won't say when or who, because you might be able to identify them, made the decision that supervisors, they did a bit of a survey and found out that most of their supervisors or managers didn't have university degrees in the technical parts of the business. They had kind of grown up. They started as technicians who learned on the job, and the best ones got promoted to supervisors, and some of them became managers, and they just kind of worked their way up the management chain. And that's common in many areas, many organizations. And what they found was that many of their supervisors and managers didn't have university degrees, and they thought that was wrong, right? There were lots of people with university degrees in some of the corporate functions, like corporate finance, corporate communications, HR, things like that. But when you get into the actual sort of hands-on functional areas where the work is really getting done, the mission of the organization, then those roles were largely run by people without university degrees at that time. So the new CEO had come in and made the decision that all supervisors going forward needed to have university degrees. So a lot of people went back into the worker pool, sort of left their supervisory position. Some of them were done through attrition. Some of them were encouraged to go back, or new roles were created for them. And they went out and hired a whole bunch of university grads who had no practical experience in the technologies and the work of the people they were supervising, and made them supervisors. Well, that was challenging because now they didn't know how to answer questions. They didn't know how to manage the work. They didn't know to assess if quality was good or not. They couldn't give advice to the workers. That whole aspect of supervision was gone, and the company suffered dramatically because of it. So I really think it's important that we take very special care of this supervisory role. It's a critical role in making sure organizations succeed. And yes, you do need domain knowledge. Somebody typed, does that mean domain knowledge is required? Yeah, supervisors need domain knowledge. They need subject matter expertise in the fields of the workers, what they're working on. Excellent questions. Any other questions, just go ahead and type them in the chat window. Okay, no more questions? Okay, then, well, thank you very much, everybody, for your time today. This is just one in a series of webinars, as I said at the beginning. These will be running roughly every 2 weeks throughout the year, and sometimes a little bit more frequently than that. We throw in some bonus ones now and again, and they are all recorded and thrown up on the Procept's YouTube channel. So look for Procept, P-R-O-C-E-P-T, procept.com. Look at the website or go to the YouTube channel to get the latest on all these wonderful videos. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.